We have another Deluxe Reverb reissue here. This one, a friend of mine who owns a music store said that a father bought this for his son, and I don't want to embarrass the owner if they see this, and I'm not going to give out any details, but said that it was the first tube amp he bought for his son. He was really proud to get it for him, and that it was a bit of a financial stretch to get this. It was used, and they took it home, and about a week into it, it blew a fuse. They changed the fuse, and now it sounds like it's only operating at half power. But apparently the dad had to really make some sacrifices to get this for his kid, and I get the impression that there's not much budget, so let's see what we can do. And he said he changed the fuse. Let's see if he got it right. It's supposed to be a 2 amp fuse, and this is a 25 amp fuse. So if there's a problem with the amp, that 25 amp fuse would make it even worse. Let me get a 2 amp fuse in there. All right, 2 amp fuse. I will trade him out. That 25 amp fuse can go in my collection in case I ever need to change a fuse on an air conditioning unit or something. Seriously, the wall circuit breakers in my house are 10 and 15 amp circuits. A 25 amp fuse does nothing, which means that things can burn terribly inside an amp long before your circuit breaker trips in the house. Let's look at the next likely cause. IC filter caps. This is a fairly newish used amp. I don't see anything visibly wrong with them. That doesn't mean anything, but let's make sure that these dropping resistors aren't loose like they were on that last one that came in. So far, so good. All right, so we have the correct fuse. Nothing dramatically, obviously wrong there. It's got these blacked out current production 6V6s that say Fender. Has nothing to do with old black RCAs, but it does make it harder to see if the heaters are working. We'll get there. Let's flip it around and look at the inside. Okay, it's bone stock, and I could smell it even before I got to it. But yeah, both screen grid resistors there are smoked. So something is wrong probably with these output tubes to take out those 2 resistors so dramatically. I don't know what the deal is with this marker. Is this someone's inspection routine? I've not run into this in a factory one before. And I don't see any changes in this amp. But someone went a little bit nuts with that pen. Let me check the solder joints on the input jacks and pots. You can't see all this through the camera. I'll do all this by eye. So I have a feeling that right now, with a 2 amp fuse, if I powered this amp on, it would blow the fuse. So I'm going to pull these 6V6s and power the amp on with my current limiter and see if the 6V6s, actually I'm going to do it first with the 6V6s and then pull them. I suspect that one or both of these tubes went bad, and that's what took out the screen. It probably had a problem, blew the 2 amp fuse, put in a 25 amp fuse, the problem continued, and then it damaged the screens. So I think it's a pretty predictable chain of events here. Hopefully they got lucky and that's all that was damaged. All right, let's power it on. Remember, I've got my current limiter on, so if there's a big problem, it should start to glow like crazy and suck up all the excess current rather than blowing a fuse. And none of that will happen until the rectifier tube starts putting out B+ as things warm up. Now I'm not hearing anything, which is kind of worrisome. And I'm not seeing any current being drawn. Let's look here. And those are heating. And yet, I'll put this on the tripod so I can take some measurements. All right, let's see what's going on here. So, put my black to chassis ground. We got 414 volts here at the rectifier 2. At pin 3, 414. At pin 4, 106. So yeah, it's not getting any screen current. We're negative 35 on the grid. Negative 35 on the grid. So yeah, these screen grid resistors are just up in smoke. And there's barely a trickle. 84 and 104 volts on the other side. 413 on the supply end of things. Given that this is a low budget owner for his kid, I'm going to try to work with him on the budget and keep this as an inexpensive repair. Let's see what I can do here as a reliable, inexpensive workaround. Well, as I suspected, these 6v6s were the culprits. They went bad, and when they went bad, they blew the original fuse, and then when he put in the 25 amp fuse, they were still bad, so they blew those two resistors that used to be right here. What I have done to keep this an economical repair is I have run a new wire down into the doghouse. I'll show the other end of that in a moment, and that is giving a new screen connection for each output tube with new 2-watt Panasonic 470 ohm resistors there. And I've got it biased about 55% idle dissipation with a test pair of groove tubes I have that are slightly microphonic but otherwise fine. So they're my test tubes, no pun intended. They're quite literally test tubes. And I will get something economical for this amp. I think the local store I do work for has some Electro-Harmonic 6v6s in stock. If not, I will order some. They are by far the most reliable 6v6s on the market right now, I have found, unless you get a good deal on some new old stocks. Let me flip this around and show you what I did. So that's the new screen grid connection there, going wrapped around that lead of that resistor and soldered. So it's not tack soldered. It is J-hooked, but there's just very little mass there, and everything's got some support. So it was a way to fix what was ailing it while keeping the repair as low as possible. And I'll button this up with some new tubes, and he will have been spared an expensive repair. I will say that if he had brought the amp in when it blew the first fuse and had not put in the 25 amp fuse, then this amp would not have needed any real repair, just a new set of 6v6s and a bias, which would have been even less expensive. So whatever this ends up costing the owner, that 25 amp fuse made it much more expensive. So I am on his side, even if momentarily he was not.